Welcome to the Further Light Podcast, presented by Wisconsin Freemasonry, helping you accomplish your Masonic goals through education and more light. And now, I present to you, Brother Chris Ludke.
Listeners, scholars, brothers, this is Brother Chris Ludke. Today we're going to talk about Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 1 to 7. This is really a third part in a series that started in summer of 2023 with a summer short where we talked about Psalm 133 and its role and lessons in Masonry. Really, Pat Choka talked about those lessons. And I had received an article a couple of years ago from Worshipful Brother Mike Consiglio, a member of Waukesha Lodge, that gets into some of this. The original article being called Circumambulation Meditations by Brother LeGrand, a member of the Texas Lodge of Research. I'm using it under educational fair use. And what I'm doing is going through some of these ideas and then playing off of them. Really looking at how these ideas came to be. Why do we use them in Masonry? What lesson are we meant to come away with? That being said, you all recognize the next one, whether you recognize the name of the book and chapter or not. This is again Ecclesiastes 12, chapters 1 through 7. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, when the evil day comes not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them, while the sun, nor the light, nor the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders shall cease, because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the birds, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return to God who gave it. Now, looking at that, and most of my 7 listeners will recognize it. Most people will agree that one cannot simply read the Bible and expect to glean all meaning and lessons. Given the lapse of time since it was written and the evolution of languages, some research is often required. In no place in the scriptures is this truth more evident than the book of Ecclesiastes, which is liberally sprinkled with metaphor. This is particularly evident in this passage, Ecclesiastes 12, verses 1 through 7, which most of you, all of you probably, will recognize as a passage used during the Masonic ritual. Ecclesiastes is defined as one who assembles, or one who collects wise sayings, and is liberally translated as the preacher. Neither the date of this book was written nor the identity of the author or authors is certain. Until the 19th century, scholars thought it may have been authored by King Solomon. But modern theologians feel that the true composer is probably unknown. They believe it is written as if King Solomon were the author. This was a very common literary device at the time. Whoever the author may have been, they extorted young people to avail themselves of God's blessings while they are still young. This is about youth and death. When we look at Ecclesiastes, much like the book of Psalms, etc., we have to understand the Bible as a collection of not just stories, but a collection of the culture, history, religion, and beliefs of a people. In this case, the beliefs of a people around the time of Solomon, David, etc. So in a very specific period of time, these are the beliefs. These are the things that they're passing down from generation to generation, the things that we might pass down through lessons in school or television. Previous generations might have used theater. Of course, television is very much theater of the 21st century. This idea of passing down history and culture and morals has been part of every society that has ever existed. It really comes as no surprise that parts of the Bible act in much the same way. And so this is clearly an important lesson. To make it into that book, it must be an important lesson. And it should be understood in the context of the time. Or again, we're in that period around about 900, 1000 BCE. So we're a little before Amos when this is being written, but let's start tearing it apart. Let's see what we're dealing with. So one can read this passage over and over again without actually understanding its meaning. And there are several explanations, lots of biblical commentaries. One of my favorite coming from the New Jerusalem Bible. It's just the one that I tend to go to, but there are several that have their own examinations of this piece. And so when we look at it, we start with, remember now thy Creator. Here, remember meaning more than just recalling to mind. It means means reverence. It means honor. It means glorify and worship God. In other words, the first thing that we're being told is that we need to worship God, God the Creator. In the days of thy youth, meaning when you were young, when we tend not to do that sort of thing, when we tend to focus on other, let's call them vices and superfluities in life. While the evil days come not, pertains to the rigors of old age. Remember, old age is different for them. Statistically, people would have lived, if you lived to the age of 10, you probably made it to around 55, 60, give or take. That's our general feeling for that area, the Levant, Israel, around that time. And remember, the statistics are off all the time. That's why you see these average ages of 20 or 30, because so many people die in infancy that it throws off the statistics. So don't play with that too much. But this experience, what it is to get old in the ancient world, is a difficult one. Remember, there aren't medications to help you out. There aren't all of the therapies and medications and medical procedures that we have today. And so statistically, by the age of 40, approximately 1/2 of all humans will have, at the time, and this continues all the way through the Renaissance into the 18th century, approximately 1/2 of all people who make it to the age of 40 will have a major physical disability, an arm that no longer works or barely functions, a leg problem, something that infected, even a small cut that may have infected, became septic, gangrenous, there may have been an amputation. There's a lot of things that may have happened. And so when we talk about the rigors of old age, don't think about it like today. Think about it in terms of at what point do you become more burden than functional member of society. Continuing on, nor the years draw nigh, meaning when that time comes near. When thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them, referring to the sadness of old age. Now, not all old age is sad. Sometimes there is a certain wisdom to it, but that's not the kind of old age that we're trying to address here. While the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain, referring again to the storm clouds of old age, the fact that life becomes less predictable, especially in the ancient world, as you get older. That cut that you may have healed well from when you were younger may become near fatal now. That little chest cold that when you were younger would have cleared in a few days now takes several weeks and may knock you down for a period of time. In the days when the keepers of the house shall tremble, the keepers are the hands and arms, while the house represents the body. The keepers of the house shall tremble. In other words, the arms and legs get that jitteriness, that tremble that we tend to see in some people in old age. And the strong men shall bow themselves, referring to the legs becoming crooked. Bow being an archaic term from the period meaning to bend. Imagine that you've been at hard labor your entire life. You've probably done several stress fractures throughout that lifetime, several of them not healing properly. So what once was very straight and very durable isn't anymore. It's not just the loss of muscle mass, but it's the actual deformity and structural damage done by a lifetime of hard labor. And the grinders cease because they are few, referring to missing teeth, referring to the fact that they don't have dentistry. The teeth would be knocked out, that you would have other issues, infections, etc., and lose teeth. And those that look out the windows shall be darkened. Well, if the grinders are teeth, then the windows are eyes, the eyes becoming weak, becoming darkened. And the doors shall be shut in the streets. The door here pertaining to the ears. In other words, someone who has a hearing impairment. As we age, we see all of these things. More tooth issues, more eye issues, more hearing issues. While the sound of the grinding is low, well, if the grinders was teeth, sound of the grinding is low means to chew toothlessly. In other words, you're not making much noise when you're trying to eat because you're probably eating soft things that have been prepared for you. And we know from historical documentation from the period that we do have elderly people whose food is being ground up, really mortise and pestle kind of ground up, and fed to them. People are caring for the elderly. They aren't just letting them die out. So this is not unheard of. The next line, and he shall rise up at the voice of the birds, indicating an inability to sleep. The fact that the elderly tend to get up very early when the birds start to sing. Again, connoting age, because at the end of the day, the elderly even today might wake up at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. Not because they want to be morning people, but because they need less sleep. So if you go to bed at the same time every night, you can imagine this alteration over a period of 40, 50, 60 years. And all the daughters of music shall be brought low, indicating that the voice is failing, an inability to sing, an inability to speak with the same clarity that you may have been able to when you were younger. And when they shall be afraid of that which is high, pertaining to a fear of heights, a fear of falling. This is a very ancient fear. Even today, a broken hip can lead to death. There was a statistic where something like 30 or 40% of broken hips result in death within a year in the elderly. At the time, it would have been much, much higher. And the problem with a broken hip isn't the broken hip itself. It's the fact that now bone marrow can be released. That is a fat being released directly into the bloodstream, resulting in clots. You also get some significant issues if the pelvis doesn't heal properly, which in the ancient world it typically wouldn't. All you had was bed rest, not advanced splinting systems. And fears shall be in the way, indicating a fear of crime, because a man cannot protect himself beyond a certain age. They become easy victims. In a world where there is no police force, yes, I said there is no police force because the people would police things. A police force is a Victorian era. It's a very new idea. But there wouldn't be someone there necessarily to protect you, or at least you would be reliant entirely on someone else. And the almond tree shall flourish, pertaining to gray hair, referring to the almost white blossom of the almond tree. And the grasshopper shall be a burden, meaning that people become weak, unable to lift, unable to, again, care for themselves. They're becoming more and more reliant in age on the people around them. And this is really the time where you could say karma or good living or whatever else comes into play. Are the children still there to watch over them, or are they only there because they have an obligation to be there? And desires shall fail, pertaining to the loss of physical appetites. Literal loss of appetite. How many of you know someone who, as they've gotten older, really have cut down on the amount that they eat or their interest in eating? And let's just focus on that appetite because I don't want to go the other direction. Because man goeth to his long home. The long home referring to a coffin, referring to the afterlife. So as we age, we know that we're getting closer to this time when there will be an end. And the mourners go about the streets, pertaining to the funeral procession. At the time, throughout the ancient world, it was a custom where you would have mourners who would be hired for such processions, really to fill out the family that's there. And the purpose of that is that there wouldn't be as much family necessarily present. You had to be buried within 24 hours. Only so many people might be able to get there. And so you would hire mourners to really show the community how important this person was. Or ever the silver cord be loosed or the golden bowl be broken. The picture here is of a golden lamp suspended by a silver cord. The silver cord comes loose and the golden bowl crashes to the floor. The light of life is extinguished. The best way to think about this, the golden bowl, the silver cord, is an oil lamp that would be used to illuminate, for example, the temple of King Solomon. It would be hung by silver cord, not actual silver, but silver would be woven into it. And if that were to come clattering down, obviously the lamp can no longer function. And so we have our image of death. Or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. This pertains to the water of life. The broken pitcher cannot contain any water. With the wheel broken, water can no longer be drawn from the cistern. In other words, life can no longer be drawn. The breath can no longer be drawn. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, pertaining to that from which God created man. And the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. This comes from Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, where it tells us that God formed man from the dust of the earth and breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and that man became a living soul. So at the time of death, man ceases to exist on earth, and his spirit returns to God who gave it to him in the first place. Looking at this whole thing, it's much easier for a young person to accept new concepts, ideas, and disciplines than one who is older and, well, as we would say, set in their ways. By the same token, it is easier for a youth to accept or remember God and his teachings, principles, and ordinances than it would be for an old person. Whatever stage of our life, it is imperative that we as men and Masons remember now our Creator. And we must remember our Creator day to day. And in many ways, this relates back to the memento mori. The idea that we need these reminders. This whole piece in Ecclesiastes is a memento mori. It's a reminder of death. And yet, these reminders of death, as I've dealt with in another episode, will make life more beautiful because you make different decisions. You decide what is or isn't important at a very different level. Imagine if you knew your time was due, that if you had been given a diagnosis of, say, 6 months, and how you would live your life differently for those 6 months. How many times would you stop and watch the sunset? How many times would you stop and observe the rainbow? Or the beauty of a simple interaction with a child? Or really pay attention to the importance of the traditions and ideas behind Christmas. Whatever it is, this becomes a beautiful reminder, a memento mori. And that reminder isn't of death so much as it is a reminder of why we live. A reminder that we need to spend our time doing those things that are going to best serve those around us, ourselves, our families, our communities. At the end of the day, it's about finding beauty in life and maintaining a framework, maintaining an understanding that this is all temporary, and that when the end comes, we don't want to be in a situation where we definitely haven't finished what we have started. We want to think every day about the importance of what we're doing and how we can finish it, how we can end things well, and how we can live our best possible life. Thank you for joining me, Brother Chris Leakey, and the entire Further Light team on your quest to find more light through Masonry.
Are you interested in learning more about Freemasonry in Wisconsin? Visit wisconsinmasons.org to learn more about Masonry and access further educational content and more light. Once again, that address is wimasons.org. Any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at education@wisconsinmasons.org. And thank you for listening.